And hello to everybody. Uh, as Roy said, I'm going to talk about culture clash, making product management and engineering work effectively together. Um, and I have about an 8 hour presentation. I have about 30 minutes to present it. So I'm not going to get through everything today. I'm going to get through all of the highlights. And as Roy suggested, if you have questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my email address. I'll be on the Slack community as well. And I'll have my contact information again at the end. Um, I'll give you a little bit of context about who I am and how I got here and what I'm talking about this. I was an ex CTO and ex chief product officer. I ran both those departments in a number of companies over a number of years. And about 9 years ago, I started this company, Interna, and we consult on product management and engineering. And our fundamental thesis, and this fundamental thing about this talk, is about product management engineering are not two teams, they're one team. They're one team that works together to build a product. And if you can achieve that, those teams can be effective. And we work with a number of companies. We do four things. We will go into technology companies, evaluate product management engineering teams, and come out with a diagnosis and prescription. Here's some things you're doing well. Here's some things you might want to do differently. Here's how. On that same concept about product management engineering being effective. For companies that have a CTO or chief product officer, they often ask us to coach the technology product management executives, whether their title is CTO, chief product officer, or not, and help them with their teams. If the companies don't have someone, they often ask us to come in and function as interim CTOs and chief product officers, help fix product management engineering teams, and then help hire someone on. And we also do due diligence for VC, PE firms, and M&A transactions. And we've done it for a bunch of companies. The reason I'm pointing this out is we see patterns. Things we see at the Walt Disney Company, we've also seen in startups. Mid-market companies. We worked at lynda.com before they got sold to LinkedIn for, I think it was $1.4 billion. B2B companies, B2C companies. There's commonalities about product management and engineering that we're able to apply to a bunch of companies. I'm going to share a bunch with them, a bunch of those with you today. So if I have time, I'm going to talk about 4 culture clashes, and I'm going to give you 5 tools to overcome them. We may only get to 3 of the culture clashes. I'm going to try to get to at least 3 in the time that we have, but I'm going to give you 5 tools. I'm going to talk about alignment, measurement, review, transparency, iteration as those tools to overcome the culture clashes. Now, the first one is alignment. Now, I mentioned before that our view is product management and engineering have one function as one team. That means they need to get aligned, and there's really 3 stages of alignment I would talk about. People who run product management engineering, I'm using CTO and chief product officer, but it really, I mean here, the product management and technology executives are really also all the people in the team. People often think their job in those roles is to optimize their team's efficiency. How do I make my team be better at engineering? How do I make my team in product management be better in product management? I have some input, something that we do, and some output. So if I'm in technology, I have some user stories that I get as input. My developers code some stuff. We output, meet the acceptance criteria. We're done. We're good. We should do that faster, better, less bugs. If I'm in product, then I have some user needs. Maybe it comes from the roadmap. Maybe I built a roadmap. I output user stories. I work with UX to put those interfaces together. Those are my outputs. And then engineering does something, I check it out, and we're good. That's what I do. I want to optimize my team to make that as efficient as possible. The surest way to create a culture clash between product management and engineering is to worry about my team's efficiency, to think about what am I doing, because that creates a barrier, a wall between product management and engineering. And remember, the primary goal here is that we're producing products for some industry, for some customers. We create value when we create value for those customers. And so think about product management and engineering only, thinks about what we're doing and creates that wall, and it creates finger pointing. I'm engineering. I just did what product management told me. If it's not the right thing, if the UX is wrong, it's on them. It's their fault. I wrote the code. I'm in product management. I'm in UX. If it's slow, if they're slow to produce it, that's their fault. We told them what to do. We told them when it was going to get done. They told us when it was going to get done. If we didn't get released in time, it's their fault. And it creates finger pointing, creates that barrier that I talked about. That's the first culture clash. So the next reasonable thing, the thing I hinted at a minute ago, is to focus on a customer we serve. But that begs the question is, who is the customer? If we're going to focus on someone, who are we focusing on? Now, you'll see in many companies that product management engineering will say, we do what marketing tells us to do. Sales gives us things. The CEO has these ideas and we just implement them. That's who our customer is. That's who we serve. You might hear people describe, there's technology, which is product management engineering, and business. There's business and there's us. And we serve what marketing and sales does, the thing I just mentioned before. But now the problem is that we have the same culture clash that I talked about doing product management engineering. We move that wall, and now we put it a different place in the company between business and technology. You see that language is poisonous, because those people in marketing and sales, the CEO, they're not your customer. They're your colleagues. Your customer is the people that pay your company for the products you build. That's how you have to focus on. So that's great. Okay. So we said there was the first culture clash between product management and engineering, which when you're only focused on your group's efficiency. So bonding it together removes that culture clash. The second culture clash is business and technology. Remove that one by focusing on customer value, recognizing that the other people in your company are your colleagues, not your customers. So that's the second culture clash. Remember, I said there's 4. So if we're really focusing on the end customer, the people that use our stuff, how do we know if we're delivering customer value? And the answer here is look at your roadmap. The majority of the activities on your roadmap should be rooted in creating direct value for the users, for your customers, for your market. By the way, those are 3 individual terms that mean slightly different things, that it's important to understand those meanings and how those are different. I probably won't have time to talk about them today, but once again, feel free to reach out to me afterwards and I will describe the differences to you and why it's important and why is it that not only do you need to understand it, but you need to use that terminology in the company and your colleagues all need to understand it as well. But the majority of things on your roadmap need to be rooted in creating customer value for your users. You should be able to measure whether your team, product management engineering together, are able to deliver that customer value. And that has to be The primary discussion you're having, it's not about the beauty of the architecture, the elegance of the code, or how many clicks there are on the user on a UI, or even how speedy the system is. Those are all important, but the primary discussion has to be about, did you create customer value? Once again, you're trying to overcome that culture clash. You're trying to align. And then it's important that every member of the team needs to know how every story delivers value, and they need to embed it into how they think, into their soul of what they're doing. They need to be able to argue one story over another, and the cost of doing it, and the criteria why the stories are. And when I mean every member of their team, I mean everybody on UX, everybody on QA, everybody in product. Certainly, everyone knows that. Everyone in engineering, everyone needs to understand the why. There's multiple ways to do everything. If people don't understand the why, they're not likely to consistently do the right way. And you want to engage in that conversation. Since product management and engineering are one team, you want to be able to engage in that conversation of, I understand why you asked us to do that. Let me propose something else that might get done less expensively, take less time. If the people don't know the why, they're not going to be able to have that conversation. But that all goes to understanding who the customer is and delivering value. Now, here's the nice thing about that. The nice thing is, I mentioned before that the CEO is your colleague, as is sales and marketing. The natural fallout about delivering value for your customers is product management engineering also falls into alignment with the CEO naturally. The job of the CEO is to create a sustainable company with high value. Now, here's the fundamental thesis is that customers and markets only buy from companies that deliver value to them. Why would you buy from someone who wouldn't? Revenue is a side effect of delivering value. People will buy from you if you produce things that that deliver value. Profitability is repeated revenue with unit margin on everything that you sell. I'm being a little pedantic here, but trust me. Net profit is gross profit less operating expenses. Do it at a reasonable cost. And Benjamin Graham, if you've never read him, he's the guy that Warren Buffett had. He taught Warren Buffett. He wrote books, and he said the intrinsic value of a company is the sum of all discounted cash flows. Said quickly, produce profit at everything you do. If your CEO wants to create a sustainable company with high value, product management engineering is a team creating products that people want to buy because they create value from them. Makes you fall into alignment naturally with your CEO. If your teams are thinking about the customer correctly and customer value correctly, then by definition, they will fall in line with the CEO. But here's the trick, and here's something that I'm not going to be able to have time to talk about in depth. But here's the trick to know. Not everything that creates customer value also creates value for the company. Just being innovative is not sufficient. MVPs and iterations by themselves are a walk in the dark. You need to be thoughtful about not just having everything on the roadmap is going to create customer value, but being able to be intelligently being smart about what things go on the roadmap and why. This slide hides a 1-hour presentation all by itself. We can talk about North Star metrics and the value of North Star metrics. And people talk about one North Star metric. I argue that generally you don't want one, but you want a small number. How to create those, how to align those with strategy. If you're interested in this, reach out to me and I will gladly spend time with you and talk about how to put together a proper roadmap that aligns not just customer value creation, but filtering it to the things that also create value for your company. Not just falling in alignment with the CEO, but getting the product roadmap in a way that creates value. The key here, and once again, I don't have time to go into it too far in depth, is the difference between being a feature factory and a real product group. Being a real product group requires that the things that are on the roadmap that create value for customers also fulfill the company strategy. And believe me, you want to be a real product group, not a feature factory. Because when you're a feature factory, you fall back into that second culture clash of, oh, people in the company don't perceive our value in product management engineering. And so we just do what the salesperson says to do to close the next sale, or what the marketing person tells us to do. So you have to be smart about the things you put on the roadmap that they're also fulfilling the company strategy. So I promised you 5 tools to overcome culture clash. I've only given you one. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to speed through things. So alignment's the first one. The second one is measurement. So it's not enough to know the things on the roadmap, create value, but you need to be able to know what they are and report them. So which metrics do you report? Often people in engineering talk about velocity or cycle time or PR response time, and product management talk about, I created this roadmap, we finished this roadmap, we have this many user stories, this many bugs came out. And these are often the metrics that engineering and product management communicates to the CEO and to other executives. The problem with these metrics are they're great internal metrics. To run your department, once again, to be efficient, you need to know these things, but they address activity, not outcome. Once again, we're interested in providing value to customers. These are things that we do. Your CEO does not understand what those metrics mean. If you report to your CEO these kind of metrics, your CEO not only would they not understand, but are likely to think that you don't understand what the business is doing. So I propose to you that everything on the roadmap needs to talk directly about the kind of value that it creates. And here's one formula to do it, an epic statement. It's the second tool I'm giving you. An epic statement says, we believe by doing this specific feature for this specific type of client, they will achieve this specific outcome. And we will know that when we see this metric move. So once again, what you're building, for whom, what they get out of it, and how will you know? Everything that's customer facing on your roadmap should have a statement of this routes you into creating customer value. But there's a secondary benefit to metrics. Turns out that everybody in your company, you can think of like a vector. Remember, vectors have 2 attributes, a magnitude and a direction, a heading. If you sum up all the vectors in your company, if they're all pulling in the same direction, you're getting maximum output. If people are doing different things, even if you hired a bunch of smart people, if they're doing things that clash with each other, you're not making forward motion. By everyone understanding the things that are on the roadmap and how they create value and how you'll know, you'll tend to have everyone pulling in the same direction. John Doerr, he's a venture capitalist. If you don't know him, you should probably read about him. He's a really smart guy. He's done a lot of good investments at Kleiner Perkins. Said, what we want is a team of missionaries, not mercenaries. Mercenaries are people that do what you ask them to do because you're paying them. Missionaries are people that do what they're doing because they understand and they care. By having all of the product facing features on the roadmap have a mission statement, you've now told them why they should care and what they should expect. So we've talked about alignment, we've talked about measurement, let's talk about review. People know how to retro their sprints. The end of a 2-week sprint, they look at it, they look at the values of it, and they say, did we get the same velocity we expected? Did we perform higher? Did we not perform as well as we expected? What did we learn? What people don't think about is to retro the epics. Retro and sprints talk about efficiency. We want to talk about effectiveness. And so by retroing the value of your sprint, did we in fact, the retro value of your epic, did this epic actually fulfill this epic value? We can then ask ourselves questions of, here's what we expected, the value we expected to create for our users. Oh, we overperformed. That's interesting. What did we learn? What do we want to do again? We underperformed. That's sad. What did we learn? What do we want to change? If you retro the epics, now you have the flywheel of, we're here to create customer value. Here's what our goal is. We made bets, right? Each epic is a bet on the roadmap. These bets succeeded. These bets didn't succeed. Here's how we're going to bet better next quarter. So we've talked about alignment, measurement, review. We're going to talk about transparency and iteration all in one. Sorry, I'm speeding up a little bit here because we don't have much time. It's not enough to review the bets yourself. And this is the hardest thing. You've got to report broadly to the company about how the bets were made. You've made a promise to the company that things in the roadmap are good uses of company capital to move the company forward to create value for the customer and to fulfill the strategy. Now you're going to come and say, here's how we did. This is the hardest thing because you're exposing yourself. The things you do well are easy to talk about, but you also have to talk about the things that you did not perform so well on. I said earlier, sales, marketing, the CEO, the CFO, the board, these are your colleagues. You've got to report to them how you do. By the way, you should expect they'll report to you how they'll do. Sales certainly does that. If you have an outside sales force, here's how we sold, here's how we made quota or not. You're doing this because not just because you're colleagues, because they know things that you don't know. That epic on the roadmap didn't work. Oh, that's interesting. Here's what we're hearing from customers. If you don't have a direct sales force, marketing represents this sometimes. The CEO might know things like, here's what are the trends in the marketplace or what competitors are doing. Marketing might know that as well. The board might know those things. There might be investment criteria. We need to double down on this stuff. We can spend more money. But unless you have that conversation about how you performed, you won't know. And then you iterate. I just have a few minutes left, so I'm going to skip a whole bunch of slides and leave you with this. The gentleman who wrote the Little Prince, I won't try to pronounce his name. My French isn't good. He said this: love does not consist of gazing at each other, but looking outward together in the same direction. Product management and engineering have the same task, gazing at the same direction. How do we serve customers? How do we create value in the world? As I mentioned, I'm glad to talk about any of this stuff again. If there's stuff that isn't clear, here's my contact information. You can hit me at this contact us. I realize this doesn't say my email address, but feel free to email me directly. You can hit me on LinkedIn. Actually, the best thing to do is probably hit me on LinkedIn or hit me on contact us. And I'm glad to take any questions that people have.
Great. Thank you very much, David. I really enjoyed that talk. It sung to a lot of what I'm interested in as well. We got a question in from Katerina that I think it's something that I've experienced as well. She's saying that we do internal um, pricing innovation, so product pay engineering to build things. So what she's asking, what advice do you give for her in trying to get alignment structure in place?
So product pays engineering, is that the way it is, or is that how they think about it?
Yeah, so I don't have the full details, but in my
Yeah.
experience, what I've had is that product will get a budget approved, and then they'll kind of say to engineering, okay, now you're going to work for us. In
Yes,
essence.
yes, yes. So it's not terrible and it's not good. And what I mean it's not terrible is product management engineering should come to the decisions together about how much should we invest for this much value. I don't like the language of engineering, you now work for us. I like the language of engineering, we work together to provide value. And that's why understanding the why is so important for engineering to know. It's say, oh, I understand what you're asking. We can do 80% of that at 30% of the cost and give you these other features because I know the why. And so what's being described as an accounting mechanism for finance to understand uh, what the investment is. Investment in markets and features make perfect sense because there's an ROI and a payback. But engineering is just a part of that. So part of it is you might have to accept that accounting feature of paying for engineering, but you don't have to engage in the conversation that way. And I suggest you don't.
That's some great advice. So hopefully, Katerina, that's something that you can bring back and take use of. So thank you very much, David. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for sharing your insights and hope everybody out there enjoyed it.
Thank you.